by Tamsyn Fortune-Wood, and in this episode we are going to talk about home educated life from the viewpoint of the person being home educated. I am Heidi Steel. I'm a former teacher and unschooling parent to 4 school-aged children who are happy living and learning as they go. I have been unschooling for over 10 years. I blog regularly. I organise coaching and mentoring services on unschooling, which you can find out more about at liveplaylearn.org. Today I'm joined by Tamsyn, who I'm very excited to have here on the podcast, and we are going to talk about Tamsyn's life as someone who is home educated. So hi Tamsyn, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so as you said, my name's Tamsyn. I was home educated for the majority of my school life. So I went to school for a very short time when I was 4. I've got to admit, I have very little memory of it. So after that, I was home educated along with my 3 siblings who were, my younger 2 were home educated for their entire school life, and my older brother was taken out about the same time as me. So he was only in school for about a year. I now have 2 children of my own who aren't quite school age. So my youngest is only 19 months and my oldest is nearly 5, but he is a September babe. So we only just got the letter, which I actually quite enjoyed disposing of. It was quite fun for some reason. It felt like a big moment where now he will be officially home ed from September. Which I don't know why, but gave me the jollies. And I live with my partner in Northampton. So that's really me in a very small nutshell.
Fabulous. In fact, we're gonna in a minute we're gonna start with the fact that you have just mentioned that you have children, and interestingly you have already decided that they are going to be home educated, which I think I'll ask you about how you came to decide that in a minute. But me and Tamsyn actually met very out of context on another course that both me and Tamsyn signed up to. I think from memory there were just 4 participants on the course, plus the person leading it, and it was really surreal to sort of meet in a completely different context and to get to know each other. So Tamsyn and I have been sort of regularly chatting for, that must be about six months now.
Yeah, about that. Yeah,
something like that. Yeah. So I'm going to start with the fact that you have obviously decided to home educate your own children. So what do you think was the biggest factor for you in making that decision?
Well, to be honest, I think even before having children, I've always wanted children. So like I've always known, when people ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I had some definite sort of ideas of job role, but I always knew I wanted to be a mother. Like it was never really a question for me. I was definitely one of these people that knew I wanted children, and I always knew I was going to home educate them. It's really hard to say the deciding factor because it just felt so right that it was more a sort of, it was almost more an instinctual than a thought process, in the sense that I just knew that that's what was right for me and my family. And even when I was like thinking about partners when I was young, I knew I wanted somebody who would want to home educate, because I knew that it's much better, it's much easier, if anything, to do it if you're both on board. I think, if it's a disagreement, it can be quite difficult for families. I always wanted my partner to want to home educate, and I always knew that's how I wanted to do it. So it's really hard to say, I did it because of this, because it was so like innate, the decision. I'm just very much believe that the way I was brought up worked, and the way that I experienced my upbringing worked, and I wanted the same for my children. And I almost had in my head this child saying, I don't want to go to school today, and me trying to tell them they have to, when I never did. It almost felt like that would be a really weird situation, me telling a child they have to go to school when I never had to go to school. So it felt like it'd almost be hypocritical of me to try and force them into this school system. And now I've got children, to be fair, my older boy, I can't imagine him going to school. He is such a free spirit, and he loves to learn from doing and experiencing and being in the wild. I couldn't imagine him being inside for that amount of time in the day. And he still feels quite young to be in a system where he would be trying to sit down for long periods of time, and I feel like he would lose a part of himself. So even more so now I've got him as a person in front of me, he just fits for him.
Yeah, that's definitely something that's reflected in a lot of people's experiences when they send their children to school and they sort of watch their child's sort of spirit, or the light in their eyes sort of just grow dimmer and dimmer and become flat. And yeah, that's definitely something that I've heard before in terms of experiences of children who have actually gone to school.
You can now support the podcast on Ko-fi, that's Ko-fi, where you can contribute via a one-off collection of £5 or by subscribing monthly. Monthly subscribers receive pre-releases on blog posts, previews for the podcasts, and free access to monthly webinars and more. As a thank you for your ongoing support. So if you are a regular listener, I would like to invite you to contribute via kofi.com/live-play-learn. Of course, if that's not within your capabilities right now, I continue to welcome you here just as you are, and thank you for listening and taking time to consider unschooling in your family. And now, back to our unschooling conversation.
To school. Very excitingly, in this episode, exciting for me, I have some questions from listeners that I would very much like to ask you in a minute, because I just thought my question for you to start with is going to be, when you tell people that you were home educated, what's their response? What response do you get from people generally when you have that conversation?
It can really vary. I think it tends to be, depends on what context they've met me. Most of the people I meet now, I'm just going to home ed groups after home ed groups. So when I tell them, it's normally, they just get so excited. I think that like, how did you, like, this kind of like, how did you turn out? And like, what do you think? How do you think? What do you think? You tell me how I turned out. But yeah, no, I do get that, because I think obviously there's that. No matter what decisions you make for your child, there's always anxiety that it's the wrong one, because you feel you obviously are very responsible for our children, and we want to know what we're doing is the best. So I think that if it's a home ed parent, which a lot of the time who I'm meeting now it's all the questions about how I did this and how things like that, which I'm always happy to answer. I think it's one of my favorite things to do. If it's in a different context, so like in either in a more professional environment or a different environment, it can be sometimes it's more the facial expressions. They don't always know what to say. It's kind of like, but you have a job and you can talk to people. I'm like, what do you like, and yeah, and it's like, yeah, I have quite a few qualifications and I'm very able to do things and interact with people in society. Yeah, I'm not an alien, I'm just a ex-home ed child, so sometimes you get that. And probably the biggest question I get from non-home ed people is, did you have friends growing up then? I'm like, yes, I had friends. Yes, I had many friends, and still have friends. And I think that can be one of the biggest questions that I get, is that idea that we were socially isolated. And I think that is one that, I get a lot, is that sort of surprise from that notion that we might not have many contacts. Or
it's
might
funny
make it awkward.
It's funny that that's the go-to question about when you're home educating your own children, what about socialization? It's funny that they look at you and can reframe the same question, exactly the same question, but for a different sort of different scenario. So one of the questions I have from listeners is, what did learning look like for you in your daily life? So
So we were, I think at the time, my parents called it autonomous learning. So, or I can't remember the other term for it, but yeah, we were very much child-led. So I think very similar to what unschooling has become now. So that notion of following the child. So until I was probably about, I think it was around 14, 15, I very much woke up in the morning and decided what I wanted to do that day. I mean, we had organised days out to castles or the park or museums and things like that, but a lot of it was very much like, what are we going to do today? What do I want to do? What do my siblings want to do? And we sort of work around that, work with each other. And sometimes it was staying at home just reading books and playing in the garden. Sometimes it was just sitting at home watching the telly, and just having a very chill day. So it was very much fluid. We were not sat at desks, there wasn't lots of written work or activities, or okay, we're going to sit down for 8 hours and it's always going to be 10 o'clock to this time o'clock. It was never like that. It was very, very fluid. When we were really young, we did do some sort of more organized bits around learning to read, but I think that was mainly with me and my older brother, when my parents sort of finding their feet with home education and sort of like how they wanted to do it. I think it changed as we sort of learned from each other what worked, and it wasn't very long. We mostly had, when it came to sort of like trying to do any more formal education, it was very much like we would go, oh, I want to learn about this, so we'd go to the library and get books out on it, rather than our parents sort of saying, well, we're going to learn about this, and then sort of instructing us to learn. It was sort of more us asking questions than the other way around. But yeah, it was and then once I hit about 15, I very much I originally always wanted to be a doctor. I'm not a doctor, but I always originally wanted to be a doctor. So when I hit 15, we started to look at how I could do this and what I could do. So I did some coursework, I did some different exams and things like that. And I actually it changed what I did and what I liked and everything, and how I did it. But from about 15, I started to do more formalized learning, because it had to be that way if I wanted to achieve the goals I wanted to achieve, if that makes sense. But that was still coming from me. My siblings were doing different things at the same time, but it did become a little bit more, okay, if I want to get that result, then I need to put the work in. But again, it was very much my lead rather than the other way around.
What was your experience of taking exams, having not really done structured learning and like formalized stuff like before that point?
So I have to say I've never really enjoyed exams, and I don't imagine ever to enjoy exams. I mean, I don't believe they're the best way of testing people's knowledge. I mean, it's just an ability to memorize facts in a stressful environment, and I don't think it tests people's real intelligence, in my opinion. But I've probably, if I could count, I've probably taken somewhere around 5 exams in my entire life, so not very many. So I started doing A levels, which I didn't really get on with. I was getting good results in my coursework, so I was actually getting A stars in my coursework, but I found the A levels incredibly dull and the feedback incredibly dull, and I said I didn't feel like I was learning anything from them. So it was never a matter of not succeeding, it was just a matter of not enjoying. So I switched and started doing open university courses, which you can kind of pick which ones work for you, and a lot of them are a course work based rather than exam based. So as much as I could, I picked those ones and did very few exams. So I really didn't get on well with exams. And then at university, funnily enough, we didn't have a lot of exams during my course. So when I was at uni, I think I only had 1 or 2, maybe I did a bit more than 5 now, I'm counting them up, 1 or 2 a year, I think. So I probably did somewhere between 5 and 10 in my entire life. And then in my latest, I did a foundation degree recently. There was only 2 exams, but they were a lot of it was multiple choice and stuff, and I found that quite, that was a lot easier going for me. But yeah, I wouldn't say I'm ever going to love exams, and I don't particularly agree with exams.
Do you see any correlation between things that you spent your time doing, like in those sort of former years, and what you like spend your time doing, that maybe professionally or like, I want to say for a hobby, but it's all life, isn't it?
Yeah.
But is there any correlation between the things you were interested in and how you chose to spend your time, in those former years, and how you spend your time now? That's a good way of putting it, I think.
Probably. I mean, we were always outside a lot, and I try and be outside as much as I can. But I think with young children, it's so good to be outside, because they're a lot less work is the wrong way, it makes it sound very negative, but they're easier going when they're outside. You know, they can't bounce off the walls if they're
walls, that's exactly what I was just thinking. There's no walls for them to bounce off.
Yeah, so I'm out as much as possible, really. So yeah, I mean, in some ways it is similar. I'm not sure if it was that formed me, or the fact that it just works. If you know, if it works, then why not do it? With regards to professional, so I was, before I'm qualified paediatric nurse, although I don't practice anymore out of choice, and I'm now a breastfeeding counsellor. I've always liked roles that are about people. I've always liked talking to people, and I've always liked supporting people, and I've always loved the idea of kind of working with children, but more from the parents' point of, like, supporting parents, if that makes sense. And a lot of paediatric nursing is supporting parents, and a lot of, obviously, breastfeeding counselling is very much supporting parents. So yeah, I've always liked caring roles, and yeah, I think it probably is a little bit from childhood, because I loved looking after my siblings and being around my young siblings, and I think that in a school environment you're only around really your peer group, and I got to spend most of my time with my friends, but also my younger siblings. So yeah, sort of formed me.
Okay, it's time for another question from a listener. Love saying that, I know. That's really exciting. It is really exciting. I really love that people have taken the time to sort of submit these questions.
Yeah.
So the question we have for you is, how do you feel when you think about the fact that you were home educated, specifically that, you know, comparing your lifestyle to how, you know, how it was very, very different to the way the majority of people are
brought up,
educated, I guess, brought up.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just feel really privileged, you know, that I was given the opportunity to experience my life the way I did. I couldn't, you know, imagine what my life would be like if I went to school. You know, I can't say it would have been worse, I can't say it would have been better, because, you know, without a time machine I can't go back and do it. But I certainly feel like I was given a lot of opportunities to experience my childhood, and to play, and to explore, and to find my own way of doing things, and to also fail at things without judgment and without punishment. You know, I made a lot of mistakes in my younger years, and we all did, you know, all children do, and I think that I never felt negative about myself because of them. You know, they were all, you know, it was all part of learning, and I think that I feel very privileged to be given that opportunity. Yeah.
So talking about time machines, would you ever have really liked to know or have experienced school in a way that you could have made that comparison, like given it a go, so that you could have you know, maybe I wouldn't say decided for yourself, but I don't know how things worked in your family well enough to know whether you had that sort of opportunity if you wanted to. But have you ever considered what it might have been like if you'd been at school?
I mean, in honesty, I never asked to go to school. I think if I'd have asked and been quite serious about it, and, you know, I think, you know, there were moments probably where I said, oh, I wonder what it would be like if I went to school. But I don't think I ever sort of sat there and said to my parents in a very serious nature, okay, I want to go to school, and this is why, and, you know, X, Y, and Z. And I think that if I had have done that, they would have let me go. I think they'd have been quite nervous, because we managed to stay under the radar for the whole of our childhood and our whole of our lives. So we were never under the LA's radar. So, you know, I think they would have been nervous, because obviously it would have opened us up to that side of things. But I don't think that would have stopped them if we'd have said we wanted to. I think I had moments of curiosity, because, you know, we were all curious, just like my friends would say to me, you know, oh, I wonder what it'd be like if I didn't have to go to school. I mean, a lot of them said they wished they didn't have to go to school more than they wondered. But I never really had that strong desire to go in and see what it'd be like to go to school, really. Yeah, small moments of, I wonder what a school day's like, in that kind of childhood curiosity way, but never really, oh, I really wanted to go and try it out. Yeah,
Interestingly, my youngest, so my 7-year-old, has spent the last week asking me a lot of questions about school and what that you know, what it's like and what people do there, and how, you know, in her own way, you know, asking about what school is and how it works. I wonder if you've ever thought about what your response would be if your own children started to ask those questions, or got more serious about it and said they definitely would like to try it?
This is a question that I posed to my partner quite a lot. And for those that don't know, my partner was also home educated, so we're actually both ex-home educated children, and he never went to school. So both of us have no personal knowledge to share with our children of the school system, which would make it quite hard to have the discussion in that sense, because I could only talk from others' experiences and what I've heard and my opinion of the school system in its, more entirety, rather than the actual personal lived experience. But I mean, I would be incredibly reluctant, to be honest, to send my children to school. And it's not that I wouldn't want to give them the choice, because I think it's where I sort of have an internal struggle, because I'm very pro child choice. I'm very much that they should be able to decide their goal, their paths, their way in life. But it's also, it's not a small decision. It's not always I know you can unenroll, but it does have repercussions on the rest of the family. It would also mean that I would have to commit to certain things. I don't want to do the school run. I have no desire to get up every morning and go on the school run. So it's not going to just affect that one person in the family. It is going to affect the whole family. It's going to affect holidays. It's going to affect siblings, because my partner works, so I'd have to drag both of them out of bed if it was one of them only wanting to go to school to go. And I think it's a really big impact on the family. So I think there would have to be a lot of discussion, a lot of know why they want to go, whether it's curiosity or whether they feel like they're missing something. And I think if they're missing something, it would be, is there any other ways that we can achieve that thing that's missing? If it's a bit more structured learning, well, I'm like, well, we can do that at home. We can, if you want structure, then I can impose some more structure if that's how that particular child feels. But yeah, I'm not saying I would say no, because I think I would never say a hard no to anything, but I wouldn't easily say yes. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. That's probably exactly, you've just sort of echoed probably exactly where we're at. When my 10-year-old, so she's my third child, had said she wanted to go to school, which was around the age of 4 or 5. And culturally, there's so much content out in the world around the age of 4 or 5, which is aimed at children going to school. So, books from the library, shows on TV that are suitable for, and aimed at their age group, are all about, who's having the best day at school, or so and so's first day at school, and so it's it's almost like marketing, they're marketed at. And she had said she wanted to go to school, and we had a really long discussion, well, not really a long discussion, but we had a discussion with her, which was centered around 2 things. And the first was, what do you think your school is for? What do you think is going to happen when you go to school? What is it that you think you're going to spend your time doing? And she said, if I went to school, I would do gymnastics, ballet, and horse riding. And so for us, it was really straightforward to go, right, well, firstly, those things aren't going to happen when you go to school, possibly a bit of gymnastics and a PE lesson. And secondly, saying, right, well, we will purposefully set out to do those things, with you, so that you can do those things. And the second thing was, like, she didn't understand at the time that I wasn't allowed to go with her. And like you say about age and maturity, and they're just so little. And she's 10 now, and she still doesn't do classes or groups or go to friends' houses unless I'm there. And I say that tentatively, because actually in the last few weeks she has done 2 things where she's gone on her own, but they've been with people that she has known for years, in places that she is really familiar with. And so, there's a lot of groundwork in place there for that to be successful, and that to be a place where she can be really confident and independent. But my 7-year-old, we've done something similar, just talking through, school and what that is, and her understanding of school. So she talked a lot about uniforms and school shoes and having a bag. And I was like, well, we can get you your own little bag. And she wanted to do lessons. She was like, I want to know what a lesson is. I want to do lessons. I want to do reading lessons, and I think she said numbers, like counting or something. And I said, well, let's do that then. So we've like put it in the diary because like you say, it has a massive impact on our life. Like we've got a lot of other things going on. So I'm like, right, when can we do this? When can we? And she's calling it her school day. So next week we've got a morning where she's going to do her school day, and we're basically going to play through what school is like. And I say that tentatively because it won't be like an exact replica of school. I'm not going to do the school run. I'm not going to drag her out of bed at 7 o'clock in the morning because she wants to have a school day. There are, and if she wants to go to the toilet at any time, then she's going to go to the toilet when she wants. There's going to be certain aspects that are not going to actually replicate school. But yeah, to scratch that itch for her, and if she wants to continue doing those things and having like lessons in that way, then we'll go with it for as long as she wants. But it's like she's able to opt out, which of course you can't do if you're at school at all, can you? You can't opt out of your literacy lesson in the morning. I don't fancy doing my maths worksheet today. I would rather make a YouTube short. And I don't think she quite understands that about what school is like. But we'll explore, we'll do that exploring of schooly things at home for a while, but in the context of playing. Really, we'll play through it, and if she wants to stop after 2 minutes, we'll stop after 2 minutes, and if she wants to carry it on for a few weeks, then we'll carry it on for a few weeks and see how that goes. But like you say, it has such a massive impact on the whole family, and when we have our own opinions about the school system or childism, and there being a bit of a mismatch, it takes working through in a different way.
I think it would be just hard, he may say, he's nearly 5 now, and he may say that he might want to go to school, but then what if one day he doesn't want to go in? I can't physically, it's against my nature and my ethos to drag him in, but equally if he's registered, I can get into trouble if he doesn't go, and it's that, he's not old enough to take that responsibility for himself, but equally I'm not going to drag my 5-year-old kicking and screaming to the school gates because he said one day he said he wanted to go. I'm like, that's just not going to happen, because I think it would make me ill if nothing else, just so against nature.
Yes. And when you have that information as a parent, so unfortunately lots of parents don't have that information before their children start school. They don't necessarily even know home education is an option or even exists. That's sort of different, and that's a different path into navigating all that. But when you've got that information, it can make those sort of questions, you have like a different response to those questions and are working through it. And I was thinking actually, like if my older ones, so my eldest is 15, if at this point, similar to when you said, 14, 15, you made a decision that sort of had this impact in a shift in what you spent your time doing. If school for him was part of the process of him achieving something that he wanted to do, I think that it would be a completely different experience from, say, sending, my child at 5 or child at 7. So that was like that
working towards something, aren't you? Working for a qualification, a goal, as an end goal in sight. And I think that when you're 5, it's just about I don't know, it's not the same. It's a very different system, I think, and it's very much
Yes, the cat has now joined us. So I have 2 cats, and they're both white, and I can't tell the difference. I can if I look really closely, and I'm pretty sure they're brother and sister. So I'm pretty sure this one is the brother. Yes, they join me frequently on podcasts and webinars, sometimes in really obvious ways like this, and sometimes in not so obvious ways, which is scratching at my back because they want some attention, which is not always very helpful. No, not at all. Is there anything that you are sort of consciously thinking that you would like to do differently with your own children that maybe was different to how you were educated or part of your life?
I think it's always easy to sort of like see, when you're the person that was parented, that hindsight, everything in hindsight, you say, oh, well, I'd do this differently. I think there are some things I'll do differently, and I think mainly because Merlin's a different child than I was and my brothers were, and I think what works for one child doesn't work for another. But with regards to specific things, I think ensuring he has the opportunities to learn how to read when he wants to is the main thing. I think that my sister does have some sort of feelings that she wished she'd learned how to read younger. And I don't know whether that, again, not going on the blaming side of things, I don't know whether she expressed that or whether it just was something that was missed, but she always says that she wished she could read a bit younger than she was. But I just hope that Merlin and Iris feel that they had the opportunities to learn the things they wanted to do. Another thing I quite liked, and I think this is a personality thing, is I liked the organised groups more than some home educated children. I liked having a weekly schedule, and I liked getting out of the house and doing organised activities. And when I say organised, I'm sort of the loose term organised. They're not like school organised or anything, but I liked doing those. So I try and offer those to my children, and again, they're never forced, and if he doesn't want to go, then that's absolutely fine. They did a lot of
maybe it's like consciously saying these are the aspects that I think worked well and I did really like, and then consciously applying them to, instead of, like, I asked the question in the negative, are there things that you would do that maybe but that's like applying it sort of in the positive. Those are the things that you
I think I have the hindsight that, like, obviously my parents originally sent us to school, so home education wasn't the before they had children, or before they when we were first born, whereas I've got that as I'm doing that from the start. People have asked me, I've called my children home ed children since they were born, because they were in my mind always home ed children. There was no question of that, even before they were school aged, as it were. But I think obviously the difference with my parents, it was after we went to school for a short period of time and that didn't work out, that we became home ed children. So I feel like I've incorporated our lifestyle that we sort of probably didn't start until we were a bit older, at that sort of beginning age. And I think that's the main difference, that I'm doing it from the start rather than waiting until they're a bit older. I was going with one main difference, but yeah.
I'm going to ask you the last question I have from a listener, which is about relationships between you and your siblings. Do you think, or what are your relationships like between you and your siblings? And do you think that being home educated together, it has impacted how you are together now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has impacted. I think there are other things that have had a big impact on how we are together. So none of us live in the same vicinity of each other. So my closest is my older brother, and he's still a good hour and a half, 2 hours away. So none of us live that far close together even. So we all live quite far away. I mean, to put in perspective, my younger sister is currently in Korea, and she will be for a good few years. So we can't really pop around for a chat very often. We do try and keep in contact, but also the time difference is quite difficult. So there are things that do hinder our relationship, in the sense that none of us live in vicinity. Oh, and my little brother's in France. So yeah, nobody lives close. I think that we're definitely of the mind that if I was to be in any issues, or there was any emergency or whatever, if I rang them, they would do everything they could to support whatever they could do. I mean, obviously from Korea, that might be slightly hard if it was anything more practical, but they will give me a lot of support, and they would, if I needed them, be there as best they could. And I think that in that sense, that we always know that we've got that person to fall back on. My sister actually lived with us for a short while she was waiting for everything to be sorted out, because with regards to COVID, it was hard to travel. So she travels a lot for work. So we had to, we didn't have to, we had her over here while she was waiting for some bits to be sorted. And it was really lovely having her here. And yeah, it just felt really easy going. And I think that, yeah, we are very bonded as a four, but probably in a different way to some people. We don't necessarily talk every week or every day, but we're there if we need each other, that kind of solidified four, I think, in that way. Yeah.
Do you think your experiences, being home educated, influenced your worldview in any way? That's a big question, isn't it?
Oh God, definitely. I mean, how could it not? I mean, it's one of the biggest choices that I think you make, is, we make a lot of choices as parents, how we're going to raise our children. From the moment they're born, we make choices. But yeah, I think being home educated, it made me definitely question, I think changed my worldview than if I'd been in school. I mean, if nothing else, I was taught to question. I spent my whole childhood being taught to question people in authority, people that not to just say yes or agree with people because they're superior, they're supposedly superior to me. That was a very different way of being. I also spent a lot of time with either children who were older than me and younger than me, so I got used to communicating with people on different levels without being patronizing or talking down or feeling like I was better or they were better, just down to age or supposed hierarchy. And I think that, yeah, I mean, how could that not change my worldview and make me a different person than I am? And I think I'm naturally distrusting to most larger organizations. I think, any sort of big corporate organizations in particular, or government organizations probably as well, I'm very distrusting, and I don't think that I naturally think that people are there just to do, just wanting to help. Maybe it has made me a little bit cynical in some ways, that I think my mum always said one of the most scariest phrases that anyone can say is, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. She always said that's never a good thing to hear from someone. And yeah, so yeah, I gotta say I probably am a bit distrusting and of governments, and just not believing that what they say at face value. But then I've been taught to question my whole life, and yeah, I mean, how can it not change your worldview?
I wonder if so we sort of started by asking what other people's questions what other people ask you when they find out that you were home educated. I wonder if we could sort of finish by thinking, or by me asking you, what is it that you really think people need to know about being a home educated young person? What is it that you would actually like to tell them, rather than answer questions about socialization?
I think the best thing is just, it's not a script, it's not scriptive. Life isn't scripted. The I couldn't say if you did this and this with your child, they're going to turn out okay, and that they're going to be happy people. But because nothing works for everybody, and I think especially growing up in a family of four, we all needed different things, and at different times we needed these things. And I think that you need to take with home ed children and people in general, you need to take every day as it comes and let them tell you what they need, rather than you trying to anticipate or decide what they need for them, because everybody is so unique. And there's no magic script for getting the perfectly happy child that's going to grow up in the way you want them to, because that's not how life turns out. And even whether you go to school or not is only one small part of your life. It's a big part, but it is only one small part, and there are so many other factors that are going to affect the kind of person you become, that we just need the space. And I think giving children the space to find themselves is the most important thing. Yeah,
there's a really interesting bit in there about outcomes and us not actually being able to guarantee outcomes. So whether your children are in school or not, we like to think that the school system says you go to school, you learn this, you get your 10 GCSEs, and congratulations, you've graduated and you have a job. And actually, even that's not guaranteed.
No, it's not guaranteed.
And it's the same with home ed, but particularly if you're taking a route whereby your child has autonomy and agency over what they're learning and when and their lifestyle, you don't actually get to control the outcome in the sense of guaranteeing, you know, what their life is going to look like and what they're going to spend their time doing. Yes, that's really that may have slightly taken us off track. The cat is here and he's going to stand with people. I'm just going to move him before he stops the recording, or he's written some notes for me on the screen. It's been really, really lovely having you here, and I really thank you so much for sharing with us what is actually obviously a really personal thing. You know, it's actually talking about your life and your childhood, and I recognise that's it's just really special for you to share that with us. So I really thank you for your time doing that, and on behalf of myself and the listeners that we have here also. And people can join me again in the next episode of Unschooling Conversations, when I will be talking to another fabulous guest, because my guests are all fabulous, about life from an unschooling perspective. Thank you for joining me, Tamsyn. Bye.
Bye.